Okay, so I don't know what it is about this week, but everything is breaking, whether it's the truck, my dad's car, or my TC, which is my daily. So I was coming home from school, and for some reason my clutch master cylinder just gave out in the CSN parking lot. So I ended up having to drive this thing home without said clutch, just grinding gears just to get here. Now, I've complained before about how hard the clutch master cylinder was to replace on the Fusion. This is on a whole nother level of hard. So, if you see right here, my clutch master cylinder for this car is actually buried pretty deep down in the engine bay. You can actually see it right behind the strut tower in this car. Luckily I had the part with me, so I'm going to try and knock this out tonight. So, I have a feeling I might need to take the cowl off just to get better access to it, but let's see how this goes. And even from the inside, it's pretty hard to get to. Luckily, I just happened to have the part sitting in my room for over a year because I was like, hey, I'll do this for preventative maintenance, and then I never did it. So I ended up getting the OEM ACEN part. That is what this car came with from the factory. And now, let's get started. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to go inside the car under the dash. Now, it's going to be really hard to record because of just how tight a space it is under a dash. But what I'm going to be doing is removing these two bolts, which are going to be behind the clutch pedal. Once those two bolts are off, and then there's going to be a pin that connects to the plunger on the actual master cylinder. Once I get the pin out, this whole thing should slide out. My only fear is that I may need to remove the windshield wiper cowl to get all this stuff out. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so originally I was trying to do this using my DSLR camera, but sadly that is a little bit hard to get in here and get any good shots. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the clutch pedal right here. Follow that guy right on up. You can see right here at the top of the clutch pedal a series of bolts. You see that little return spring right here? It'll be easier if you remove this return spring and you see the bolt right back behind it. See, it's just so hard to get decent shots of anything. Well, there's one bolt right there. So that right there is the plunger that goes to the master cylinder. There's one bolt on that side, and right over here, one bolt over here. Those two bolts, you'll need to remove them, as well as this little T-joint piece that hooks to the master cylinder, or the clutch pedal. You can see just how tight the clearance is in here, in terms of how you can get to anything, but it's definitely doable. This is the best I could do to show you guys where everything is. It's just really tight squeeze in here. And in terms of getting these bolts off, you have to be pretty creative. But extensions and patience are going to be your best friend on this job. I'll explain it in better detail here in a minute with the master cylinder outside the car. Okay, so now I've basically disconnected everything underneath the dash, including the two bolts, the pin, and the actual little bracket thing that goes onto the pedal. The next step is going to be to remove the windshield wipers and this cowl so I can gain access to the actual master cylinder, which is behind that strut tower. So I'm going to start by taking off these two caps right here, and then removing the wiper blades, and then taking these push pins off, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now to remove the cap that is holding this on, what I ended up doing was just pushing on it right here with this knife. I popped it in here and then pressed up, and the cap comes right off just like that, and that exposes the bolts. So I'm gonna do it on this one right here. See if I can try to do it with one hand, but probably not. We'll see. Right in there. There you go. And boom, take those off. Okay, so now that you pulled off those two 14mm bolts or nuts, what we want to do is close the hood just like that. Pull this up just like that, and then it should come right off with two hands. Okay, so now the wipers are off. The next step is to pull out the little plastic clips that hold the cowl in. It's going to be these guys right here. They're pretty simple. All you gotta do is push down in the center of these clips and pull them right out. So I might have skipped recording a step, but I got the cowl off, right? Now there's 4 bolts here to remove the windshield wiper motor. Right here, right here, right here. Like, actually, it's like a whole assembly almost. And then this plug right here to pull it out. So then now this thing can come on out, And we have one more little thing to take off. And that should give me enough access to get to the clutch master cylinder. Okay, so I pulled off the few bolts that held this guy on right here. So I pulled off those bolts. Now this guy should come right loose, and voila. So that's out. You can kind of see the clutch master cylinder from there. At least it's a little bit more access than I would have it earlier. Okay, so pulling all this stuff out gave me a lot less clearance than I thought it would. Basically speaking, you still gotta like put your hand underneath in here and grab that little hose that goes to the master cylinder right there. So you see that little compression ring, that hose going right there, that's going to the master cylinder. So you got to put some pliers in there, pull that out, and then I'm going to hopefully find a way to block that up so it doesn't spill all over my car and eat away at my paint. And then out next to that you see the actual high pressure line, which goes down to the slave cylinder right there. So once those two are out, this guy should come out. Okay, so I finally got this clutch master cylinder out, and it was the biggest pain I've ever worked on in a car. It literally took me less time to pull the tranny out of my Mustang both times than to take this thing out. So getting it out from under the dash is relatively simple, but just the clearances of it all make it really hard. So number one is when it's in the car, it's gonna be like this. This is gonna be butted up to here, just like that, and it's gonna be held in by not only these two bolts, but also this piece right here. So even after you get everything else off on the outside and you get these two bolts off, you have to pull this out, pull the pin that holds this to the clutch pedal out, and then unscrew this. My problem is this was really tight in my car, so it was just really hard to get it in there or get it off. I probably spent almost like 2-3 hours just trying to pull this thing out. It's out now, and now I'm going to put the new one in, and hopefully I will have a clutch again. Yay! Other than that, this whole process is relatively simple. I'm now going to start putting everything back together, and I'll have windshield wipers again, because I have been driving around without windshield wipers for about a week. But it's Vegas, it doesn't really rain here. And then I can get back to replacing wheel bearings and putting some extended control arms and some other stuff on this truck real quick. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is reinstalling this tray that goes up over here, and putting those bolts back into there. It's a bunch of 10 millimeters. Okay, so the next step you want to do is grab this little ring. I know it's a super easy step to forget, but it is really important. So this little ring is what connects this hose right underneath here to the little whatchamacallit. This is basically what's going to get the water that comes from your windshield tray evacuated from the engine bay and out under the car. It's not like super important, but also it's probably super important. It doesn't really do anything for no reason, so yeah. Now that's on there, next step is to grab the windshield wiper motor, which is that guy, lay it down and put the 4 bolts that hold it in. Also, this thing is going back together so much easier than when it came apart, but also I was really frustrated the night I was doing all this shit. So that's probably it too. Yank, and 4 bolts. Okay, so now the wiper motor is bolted in, the plug is clipped in, this little guy is on here. Next step is to place the cowl back on the car. Nice. So this, oh damn it. Well, from what I remember, this guy was basically just held on with push pins. I'll just set that on up and put everything on there. Okay, so once the cowl is on, the next step is just like earlier, open the wiper back up so it's facing up, close the hood, place it right down in there, and then tighten the 2 bolts that hold it down. This is way easier than taking it apart. So as much as I've complained about getting this job done, it actually wasn't too hard. The wipers are on, they're bolted in. I put the covers, the little caps back on, all of that stuff. I actually ended up fixing my sprayer issue where it wouldn't work. I just found out that a hose was loose. But overall, this is a pretty easy job. It's just a lot of tight clearances. Next thing for this car is probably going to be taking it off the road and completely rebuilding the front suspension. Because oddly enough, both of my CV axles went bad again after like 2 years of driving. I'm probably going to just like tear everything off, put new shocks, control arms, CV axles, tie rods, sway bar end links. Just replace the whole front suspension on this car. I might make a video on that or I might not. I know I still gotta finish the video on that truck over there, the van. And I think I'm gonna get my IS300 going and make that my drift car instead of the Mustang for now. But overall, super productive. If you want to see more videos of that kind of stuff, hit subscribe. If you like this video and helped you out doing your clutch master cylinder on your TC, hit like. Have a good one. Bye bye.